Welcome to Veteran Resource Podcast, where you will meet nonprofit organizations focused on improving the lives of veterans and their family members. Here is your host, Jeremy Paris.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 73 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Paris. On today's Thought Leader Thursday, we have Michael Penney, who is a great public speaker. He's got an awesome TED Talk out there. He also works with Bunker Labs. He's the co-host of Cigars and Sea Stories, which I was on episode 130. But the main thing that Michael is doing is trying to provide value. And you're going to get a lot out of this episode. So we're going to jump into it right now. Mike, welcome to the Veteran Resource Podcast. How you doing tonight?
Hey, it's great being here. Yeah, doing well.
Awesome. Before we get started talking about what we really wanted to bring you on for, just wanted to kind of get a little bit about your background so the listeners know really who you are.
Let's see. So I'm a Marine veteran, served 8 years in the infantry, 3-7 weapons company for two tours to Ramadi in 05 and 07, was a combat marksmanship trainer in Quantico from 08 to 11, 2010, 2011-ish, and then deployed to Afghanistan in 2011 with the police advisor team out of 1-5. So did my 8 years there, transitioned out, as we say, and evolved into a Marine veteran and drove clear across the country, went to school, became an entrepreneur, failed a bunch of times, like a lot.
Failed forward.
Yeah, well, it's not so much that I as a human being failed so much as just the ideas and the different things that were, I was doing, unfortunately failed. So learned a lot. That's what I'm trying to say. A lot of lessons learned along the way, compiling as many lessons learned as possible. Wound up making my way down to Raleigh, North Carolina, where I reside now, which is a fantastic spot, and pursued entrepreneurship. So I'm a podcaster, a public speaker, do a variety of different things, as well as a program director, program manager, program guy with Bunker Labs RDU. So, yeah.
Very nice.
Anything and everything entrepreneurial. Yeah. Entrepreneurship.
Love that word too, entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
Is that something you coined? I haven't heard that one before.
No, I think that was, where did I hear that? It was the National Association of Small Business, Veteran-Owned Small Businesses, I want to say they actually have like a trademark on that.
Ooh.
Okay, mine has a hyphen in it. How's that sound?
Ooh.
There you go.
Nice.
Now we're not running afoul. Yeah, but you know how it is. What I love most about this whole thing is, so I grew up playing sports, as a lot of us did, who are veterans, but I kind of look back on this past week for some reason. I was like, oh yeah, here's all the sports stuff that I got, from back in the day. Well, I grew up playing hockey year round. I played winter, spring, and then an inline season in the summer. I lettered in wrestling in high school, and then wound up going into the Marines and the infantry and all of this stuff. And hey, when I'm done, I'm gonna go into entrepreneurship. It's like, A, I either don't shy away from a challenge, or B, I'm a glutton for punishment. I haven't figured it out yet. So, I'd like to think that I enjoy a good challenge, and I'm going to do not the things that are crazy just because they're crazy, but because they're crazy and could make things a heck of a lot better.
Yeah, I see that with a lot of veterans, that they still have that passion, and I don't think it's ever going to go away. I know I feel it. That passion to make things better in the world. And you're going to try to, instead of going out and like, I could have started a million businesses doing just about anything, but none of them were my passion, and many of them wouldn't have improved anything for the world. So I shied away from them.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when I transitioned out, I created this product. It was a plastic device, whatever. It was a product. And albeit I was very passionate about it when the project ultimately died, I mean, a part of me died. You know how that goes. It's just kind of like, oh yeah. God, Yeah, it's depressing and down and awful and a struggle, and it's very real. It almost feels like a divorce, which I had one of those in the past also, so I definitely understand the heartache that comes out of these things.
Oh yeah.
Because there are babies for the time, you know? But what's great though is I've always been very passionate about sharing stories, but sharing each other's stories. Not in a braggart sense so much as just smoking and joking and hanging out, and that's ultimately what led to this notion of the podcast with Cigars and Sea Stories.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it felt like. For those who don't know, I was on the latest episode of Cigars and Sea Stories, episode 130. So make sure after you're done with this, don't go there now, but after you're done listening to this episode, go and check out Cigars and Sea Stories and check out episode 130, and you can find out a little bit more about me and about the podcast and maybe something you don't know already. But that's one of the things that I caught when I was on getting interviewed by you guys, is it didn't feel like an interview. It felt like we were all just sitting around, maybe even sitting around a fire, having a couple beers and just talking.
Yeah, there you go. What I love most about it is that you've got to be a veteran. You've got to be adding value to the world in order to be on the show. But it gives a fly on the wall view into who we are, what we're all about. And what I mean by that is our subculture. We're all about that high fives post firefight, hanging out in the dud pit or whatever it is, and it's where camaraderie comes from, but it's also where a lot of like goofing off in the military happens.
Yeah.
Which is what's fun about it, right? Those are the best times in the military, So it was funny because when Bennett and I actually went down this pathway, my first company had been a failure. And I was in kind of this weird depressive sense. But I learned this mantra, so to speak, this philosophy of just adding value, something that I stumbled across during my divorce. I went through a divorce, separation from loved ones, loss of loved ones, friends and family who had passed away, and dealing with that struggle, dealing with personal illness and loss of income. And I had dealt with all of those things at the same time. With that, and I was 22, 23 years old, trying to get through that and trying to make sense of it. So it was very difficult, but I realized that if I could just go and add value, whether it be to the mission and our fellow Marines or to the situation that I encounter with my friends, that was the only way that I was going to be able to get through it. But it meant that I needed to get out of my own funk, so to speak, and get through it, which seems a heck of a lot easier than going through it. I'll tell you that much. It's a daily thing. And so I went to this national conference for entrepreneurship boot camp for veterans. I'm actually an alum of the Institute of Veterans Military Families, and fantastic program if you're not already familiar. So I went to the national conference to all of my fellow veteraneurs and said, hey, I want to add value to your organization. How can I help you? What do you need my support on? Here's what I'm good at. Here's what I could potentially do for you. And it worked a lot.
Very nice.
I didn't realize that I kind of just did business development, which is basically what it boiled down to. But I wound up walking around the Olympic Park in the middle of downtown Atlanta. We were right there for the conference. Bennett and I were out at probably about, it was like 0 hour, 01, something like that. And Bennett's our co-host on Cigars and Sea Stories, fellow Marine 03. And we're just smoking and joking, literally smoking cigars out in the park. And he's like, dude, we should do a podcast. Have you ever looked into that? No, the market's ready for it. We could potentially do this. Oh yeah, man. It could be like we're hanging out in the lot. Oh yeah. Like we're smoking. Yeah. Oh, Cigars and Sea Stories. Yeah. And it was like somebody turned the lights on, which they did. It was 2 security guards on a couple of Segways telling us to get the hell out of the park. But it was that bing, like, yes. And then how the hell are we going to do this? So we did. We've never lived in the same state together, and yet we're business partners. So
That's great.
And we're in different generations. He served in recon in the early 90s, and I served in Iraq and Afghanistan and from '04 to 2012. So, I mean, it's fantastic to have that overlap. He's a VA rep and does great things with our fellow veterans within his sector. And then we wound up opening the podcast. We have on some fellow O3s on there. And it was a fantastic experience, grew it up. And I wound up saying, hey, Bunker Labs is coming to Raleigh. Let's join this. Let's see what we can do. Let's see how we can add value. So I recorded an episode with the executive director, Dean Bunchu, who's a fantastic guy, fellow veteran. He was an Army officer. And so said, hey, this is what we're doing. We're through proof of concept. We want to be a part of this. He invited us into the cohort. It was around that time that I was thinking about doing a TED Talk, which if you're thinking about doing a TED Talk, do it.
I am. I've been thinking about it for a while, and I was going to totally, corner you and ask you every question in the book about everything dealing with the TED Talk. But I was just waiting for the right time. So yeah, now's a great time that you can't go anywhere. I got you on the podcast. I'll just drill you with TED Talks. That's really what this is. This episode's not even going live. This is all about me just finding out about the TED Talk.
Nice. Yeah, man, I'm an open book. It was a fantastic experience. What can I tell you?
That's actually the reason that I had you on the podcast was when I was looking at Cigars and Sea Stories and doing my research and looking at everything, I came across your TED Talk and I started watching it, and I have to say it blew me away. Like you really nailed it. You're a great speaker, and you totally killed it. And the message that you were getting across of providing value really resonated with me, because that's really what I'm all about. And I went into the veteran artist program. How can I help? Well, they need a website. All right, I could build a website. I'll build that for you. And built up the online community forum and Music for More. They needed help. I started just showing up to some of their events and helping them out, and ended up, I'm on the board now and can help out in a much bigger way. And
yes,
yeah, and it's just about, doing exactly that, is showing up and providing value. And so your talk was like exactly what I wanted you to share with the listeners was, kind of walk through that, where that came from and where your mindset was when you were creating this talk.
I've wanted to be able to bring that philosophy to a very public forefront for a little while now, just in kind of seeing the results of that workout, so to speak. Practical application, when you're looking to better yourself, is very similar to working out in that you don't see immediate results. It's something that comes out of day in and day out applying that philosophy. I originally went into the TED arena, so to speak, with the idea of adding value, but not the TED Talk. So that's the first thing that I'd like to say. I did not have a TED Talk before I went there. What I did is I knew that this is what I wanted to push. I understood that this is the idea we're spreading. And thanks to my Kevin Snyder, who is my presentation coach. Kevin's a professional public speaker. He didn't need to work on the mechanics so much. The Marine Corps taught me how to do public speaking. I was an instructor at Quantico as a combat marksmanship trainer. So we were in an auditorium of 300 people 5 days a week, training them in combat marksmanship with demonstrators and everything else. And then as an advisor, the majority of the time you're actually training people, teaching classes, but you have to go through an interpreter, which is a whole nother skill set unto itself. So here's the first thing they tell me when I get into the meeting room. Don't be an educator. Don't instruct. Don't instruct at all. And you can't move anywhere.
So they just took away all your weapons.
Everything. They disarmed me. They were like, great, you're a good public speaker and you can't do any of your old tricks. Yes. Right? Challenge. I'm outside of my comfort zone. I'm telling you, man, my heart rate jacked when they told me that. I was like, oh shoot. Oh no. Like, wait a minute, I got to stay in that fuzzy red circle the entire time? Like, are you serious? Like, my movement matters? I got to be almost dramatic? Ugh. Which that's the thing is, if you ever stumble across it, it's on YouTube somewhere, I'm sure, but it took me 45, maybe 50 takes to get my 2-minute entrance monologue, so to speak, nailed down.
Whoa.
As to why it was an idea worth spreading. I used my webcam, and I had already had a lighting background or whatever I bought for $100 on Amazon. Did it on Microsoft Media Player, so relatively inexpensive is what I'm trying to say. Already had the materials and started, just trying to express it, to get it out. I tried writing it down on paper, what I wanted to say in like a script, and eventually it just finally rolled out. And I got the take that I wanted, but it was practice and practice and practice and practice, or just iteration.
Yeah.
Is it, kind of trimming the fat, sculpting something that's underneath of the layers of marble. They accepted it, and then wound up doing a series of interviews. So it was like 2 or 3 interviews where we had 8 people on I think it was like Hangouts, Google Hangouts or something like that. And I needed to get through the committee for TEDx Raleigh. Each one's ran a little bit different. And then you go through, and we were fortunate enough to each have a presenter coach, as well as somebody to help us with our slides. So I already knew how to make a PowerPoint, but I handed it over to a wonderful woman named Wendy, who is an amazing professional, and was like, let's just do this. And started, yes, awesome. That works for me, right? So there are a lot of other people behind the scenes that help.
I didn't know this at all. I thought that you just showed up, you had your everything's prepared as far as the speech, and pretty much everything was up to you. I didn't know that you had coaches on the side and people helping out. That's really cool.
Think about it like a highly critical audience member, more so than coach in the sense of speak from your diaphragm and we need to move here like this and so on and so forth. Some of the people, and I say it that way because they want you to do well. You're there to do well. We're all in this together.
Yeah.
These people are like family now. I'm telling you what, I have no problem calling up like Doug and Jason and Linda and all of these other different people. I mean, they're fantastic human beings, which was another reason why I wanted to step outside of my Marine Corps comfort zone and see if I could go swing in the realm of, civilian thought leaders and stuff like that. So
how long was the whole process to the point where you actually spoke? How long is that frame?
I caught the tail end of the entrance. So it was the beginning of January when I put in. And then March 19th is when the actual event took place.
Oh, wow.
It was open for, I want to say, about 60 days. So through the holidays, I want to say. I had no intention of doing a TED Talk over Christmas 2015. I saw that it was in the area and what was going on, and I kind of put my toes to the edge. And Alicia, a fellow veteran, slammed me in the back and said, let's do this. And it was one of those where that's the other thing is it was our fellow bunker cohort members that encouraged me as well.
Oh, nice.
And I took my opportunity to use them as an audience, and I did a terrible rendition of a TED Talk of what I thought I could probably turn into a TED Talk. It was awful. So I knew that I wanted to talk about the 5 common IEDs that human beings will potentially encounter, at least in our first world American society: divorce, death, separation from loved one, loss of loved one, personal illness, and loss of income. And I just needed to get it out, but I needed there to be some sort of practical application exercise, so to speak, that you could do so that you would be cognizant of the fact that you're adding value. And that was the main reason why it was so important for me to get guidance from people who would critique and not just criticize, which was of huge importance. I originally wrote it out into a 15-page document, handwritten, typed it out into something like an 8-page document. When I first gave what I thought would be a TED Talk, it was about 48 minutes long, which is way too long, obviously.
Mm.
I whittled it down to about a page and a half 2 days prior to the event. Like, I'd been whittling it. This consumed me. This is what I did. I practiced for 6 hours a day, every single day.
Wow.
Wherever I went in the car, I listened to myself to make sure that I was getting it down correctly. Matter of fact, when I got in the car after the event, I turned on my radio for the first time. It felt like I was coming back from deployment. It was very odd. And so I went high and right. I went Zig Ziglar on it. I was like, yeah, man, I've got to figure this out. And I whittled it down to 8 bullet points the night prior. I could recite it in the mirror, start naked, just my wedding ring and tattoos, and get it all the way through. I knew what my time looked like. I knew that I had 30 seconds before or after, roughly around a 15-minute mark. I recited it twice on the car ride into the actual event itself. I recited it once in the back room. I actually practiced how to walk on stage because you couldn't see it. I wasn't introduced on the video online, but there's a ramp that you walk up on the right side. So it's staged left when you're up there, but it's staged right. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I was in the back behind that 90-degree, which, it's right behind that piece of drywall, practicing so that I wouldn't fall over as I walked up on stage. So it was, let's prep all the way until we leave the wire. And then when we leave the wire, it's freaking game time. And boom.
Nice.
And that was just kind of the whole, and if you watch the TED Talk, you'll know what I mean. The booms from the TED Talk. So
yeah. And so after that, then after the TED Talk is done and you walk off stage, and what happens then? Like there's a period of time before that actually is out on social media, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting time because everybody wants to know where the video is and what's taking so long. You know what it is there's a professional process to everything, and if you want it done right, it's going to take a little bit of time. And we were lucky enough to where the folks we were working with internally who are doing the video, it was professionally done, the audio and everything else, great folks all the way across the board. They even gave us iterations of the video prior to it going live. And it's like, yeah, it looks great. It's just, come on, let's do this. Which is, of course, the first reaction. And then you're like, okay, yep. Let's see. There were a couple of different things that I wanted to have them edit in and around on mine, which was fine. Nothing major. Mm-hmm. But I was fortunate enough to get that opportunity. Some people, I've been told that it was like a week later it was approved and then it was up on YouTube.
Oh, wow.
I heard other folks say it was 6 months until they saw their TED Talk on YouTube.
Wow. And so did that TED Talk get you in the door for a lot of other opportunities?
Yes and no. And I say it that way because I was going through the cohort at the time and then accepted the position with Bunker Labs, which was a shock. I didn't realize that was coming down. And a welcome opportunity. So Bunker Labs and my role over there has put me in front of a lot of audiences. They'll say, hey, you seem pretty polished. Do you do this for a living or whatever? And usually that turns into a conversation. Hey, yeah, I did a TED Talk at one point and I've done this before in the background. Has it really turned into you're a public speaker and this is what we would like to do? Yes, to some degree. But I haven't also taken the TED Talk and leveraged it in that way either.
Gotcha.
Some folks do that, which, I mean, good on you if that's what you're looking to do and stuff. Mm-hmm. I look at, like, I'm the guy who just has crazy goals. Like, I've always wanted to do a TED Talk. I want to have 3 bestsellers on the New York Times list. I want to have a hand in helping to create 400 veteran billionaires.
Sweet.
People want to own an island. I want to have an archipelago because everybody's got to have friends. And it's not so much that it's this weird world domination. It is dreamed so incredibly big and when I tell folks, like, for instance, I want to make 400 veteran billionaires, I want to have a hand in helping to create an entrepreneurial ecosystem of veterans who are extremely fit financially, what have you, in order to carry that guide on for future generations is all that I'm trying to say. So if in my lifetime I could help generate 4 billionaires that eventually turned into that, cool.
Very nice.
To other people, different folks have different goals. For me, success is the longer funeral procession.
Yeah.
So how many people did I make a positive impact in that care enough to show up when I croak?
Right.
You know,
Well,
and that's,
I think that the TED Talk, though, knowing how it affected me watching the TED Talk, I think for you to really want to get that out there can be a lot more than being about, hey, look at me, I did a TED Talk, and more about that's an important message that you're giving that I think will affect a lot of people positively when they see it. And so getting that TED Talk out to as many people as possible, I think you're going to be touching a lot of people out there in the world and making a great impact.
Thank you. Sincerely, thank you. One of the things, I think I mentioned this earlier, it was cut out, the intro to the audience at TEDx Raleigh. And Bill Marlowe, our MC that day, was the one who came up with a line, which I just absolutely love. And it was the original title, How to Add Value to Every Situation. You have more in common with a combat veteran than you realize. That's the other thing that I'm looking to strike. I frame it around an IED, an experience that I lived through, but then the personal IEDs that we have to navigate. IEDs of the heart. And one of the things that I say is, unfortunately, when your heart is broken, which will happen to all of us, you're not given the privilege of a huge explosion. When an IED goes off, everybody knows that you're hurt or wounded and wants to help you. When you get dumped in McDonald's during rush hour, like, nobody cares.
Right.
But it has the same severity in your mind or in your heart. I don't feel that there's a gap. A lot of folks say that there's a gap in between our warrior class and civilians and what have you. I disagree with that. I think that civilians have been looking to veterans for leadership, for lack of a better way to put it, because a lot of us go in, we want to be there spiritually. We're doing a job that other people wouldn't do for lesser pay, away from home and all of our family, just because we love it. And they can't figure that out. And we were taught in a lot of ways how to use the skills, knowledge, attitude, tools, resources to do the whole adapt and overcome thing. And unfortunately, it's fallen by the wayside. Resiliency, a lot of these different things, they've taken a back seat. So it's just, all that it boils down to is just stepping up and out there as veterans, which so many of us have done before in the past. I mean, I'm a Marine, for Christ's sake. Steve McQueen is my brother. Like, come on. You know what I'm saying? Like, what, Gene Hackman, Drew Carey? Where else do I need to go with this? And it's not just actors by any means. So there are a lot of other folks who have walked the hallowed halls of the Corps, on the enlisted side for that matter. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're not all major generals and have gone on to do great things. But honestly, and without trying to sound like a dork, I prescribe to a lot of what Mattis says, General Mattis. I carry a book of Marcus Aurelius's Book of Meditations. I believe in Stoicism. I go to Cicero for a lot of these things, not necessarily political. My management style is a half of what I learned as a non-commissioned officer in seeing Marines earn awards like Silver Stars and Navy Crosses, and combining that with the essential Drucker, and stuff like that from the business school. I read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill when I was in Afghanistan. And then How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is a terrible title in my opinion, but a great book.
Right.
0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, Soulcraft is Statecraft by George F. Will, Sergeant to CEO by Sean Jensen. I told everybody at the muster this. I said, do you know how I found Sean Jensen, who was our speaker at the muster, the bunker muster not too long ago? I said, I sat down in one of my dark days. You know how it is. Every once in a while, you just don't think you can make it. You still have those days. And I said, sergeants, I started typing, sergeants Marine Corps sergeants who have become successful CEOs. And Sean Jensen's name popped up in the Google machine.
Wow.
And I invited him on to Cigars and Sea Stories, and then eventually invited him to be the speaker at the muster. He said, matter of fact, when I called him up, thank you, Sean. God, I love you. Semper Fidelis, brother. When I called him up, he said, Mike, that is the busiest time of year you could possibly want me to do anything. But for you, yeah.
Wow.
And I'm, yes.
That's great.
You rock. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And come on. That dude got out of the Corps before I got in it. You know, like, sweet.
Wow.
So that's some of the other power that comes out of this too, in a really positive nature. And what I mean by that is if you add an immense amount of value to the situation, you better have what you want and what you desire most in mind when you add value. And the reason why I say that is because if you're adding value, eventually it's going to come back to you tenfold. And somebody is going to say to you, how can I help you? And you better have an answer for them.
That is
because they care.
That is great advice.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, how many people out there, how many listeners out there right now know exactly what it is you want? If somebody said, how can I help you? How many of you know exactly word for word what it is you want?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I honestly can tell you, I've been doing a lot of soul searching. I've been doing a lot of studying. I've used the Freedom Journal, and I wake up in the morning and I write in the journal, and I go to sleep. Before I go to sleep, I write in the journal, and I'm tracking exactly what I want on any, 10-day sprint going towards my 100-day goal. So I do know exactly what it is that I want, but I don't know that most people out there do. So that's great advice.
I tell you what, I've been blindsided by an opportunity that I have not been able to capitalize on, which you graciously decline the opportunity in hopes of being able to circle back on a greater opportunity if you do it right, which might sound, kind of massaging stuff or whatever, but no, that's called building rapport and maintaining a relationship.
Right.
Which is the caveat to it, because relationship building is, of course, crucial. You don't need to build relationships with people that you don't like, which is something that I learned when I left the military. I thought that I needed to build relationships with people that I didn't like. Nothing could be further from the truth. The military does a really great job of bringing together a lot of close-hearted people who are very different-minded.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, right now, you couldn't recite your favorite poem by mind. You couldn't recite your favorite song by mind, but you could do that by heart. That's the whole point. You come together under that good orderly direction, the similar core belief structure, your values are the same, even though you disagree all the time. That's family in all actuality.
Right.
That's a lot of the other add value into a place where you feel in your heart of hearts that it belongs. And then when the opportunity comes your way, you won't feel bad when you capitalize on it, because they're looking to reciprocate the value that you've added to them. So if you don't like the people that you're around, get the hell away from them, because that'll probably add value to their situation as well as yours. Whereas if you're within that same core belief structure and you don't necessarily like what they're saying, they're probably giving you good advice.
Yep.
If you're close-hearted in nature, you both believe in that same mission, but you don't agree on a subject, that's okay. That's all right. But if you walk in and something is just pinging.
I've had marriages like that before.
Yes. Oh God. It was like, that's my first marriage. It was just like, ugh.
You could feel it. You know it.
Yeah. And they're like, for the kids, man.
Yeah.
For the kids. Oh, jeez. Right. And that's the other thing too, is it's not like it's altruistic. What, are you kidding me? I've been blown up by 4 IEDs. I got blown off a building, had an RPG bounce off my truck. Right, we've done a hard landing in a helo before. I've gotten blown up on foot. That sucks. I mean, I served in combat in 2 wars before the age of 25, which is motivation to me from a natural law perspective. It's motivation, like, I'm not dead yet.
Right.
Oh my God, let's keep rolling. Whereas it's really easy during those dark days to just kind of be like, oh, I've got to isolate. I'm going to be in here and just kind of, but of course, that adds zero value. There is something to be said about the whole add value principle. If you yourself haven't cleaned up your own house, so to speak, if you yourself, how do I put it, without being a charlatan, right? Like, the reason why I talk about add value and all of those different things is because, unfortunately, I've had to encounter all of them. But that's all that I'm trying to say is there's a lot of folks that'll go out there who free advice is free advice, and you take it with a grain of salt. Some of the simplest things in life can also be the most difficult, the most challenging. And for me, adding value to every situation and trying to figure out what that value is for the given situation has been probably the most difficult challenge. And it is an endless challenge, which is fantastic for me.
Pretty rewarding challenge, too.
If I got time, I'd love to share one more anecdote.
Absolutely.
In northern Michigan, I'm originally from Michigan, from the lower peninsula, but northwestern Michigan in Traverse City, where my folks
That's
live.
where my son lives.
Really?
Yeah.
Small world,
Yeah.
man. That's nuts. So, yeah, so in Interlaken, if anybody's familiar, I walk into a gas station. This poor lady's talking to this guy who just doesn't understand prepay. How to prepay for gas, because we don't do that up there. You pump your gas and then you walk in, you're like, here you go, and they give you change, and then you walk out like, yeah. So we trust each other. I don't know. So the guy's like, I don't get it. Like, what? I'm just supposed to say 40 and then you're just not going to take the other money? Well, yeah, yes, there's no money to take, and yeah, you just zip it and that's it, and the change stays in your account. She's trying to explain it, and this poor lady, oh God, I felt so bad for her, and she was just rubbing the forehead like, why doesn't this guy get it? But being very nice, being very cordial, right? Now, I cannot add value to that situation. I know that. I know for a fact, right? But I step back and I smirk a little bit. I'm fine, whatever. Don't make eye contact with the other patron. Old boy walks his way out to the truck in a huff. She does the, I'm like, rough day, huh? Yeah. Hey, nope, no problem. I'm going to get gas too, but here, check this out. Swiping it. You keep the change. Keep it, go for, come on. Gotta laugh, gotta smile out of it. It's value. Right?
Very
the other
nice.
guy's got his gas. Value's in, his tank right now, but she needed it, right?
Yep.
So just that little bit, I was having a terrible day that day. Terrible. I was having a terrible day. And that little bit, that right there, got me through that day. She felt better, and then I left feeling just one notch higher than I was before. And that matters.
And it cost you nothing to do that. I mean, you didn't go like way out of your way to go and do something really huge. You were just a human being.
Yeah. Just be a decent human being.
Yeah.
I mean, it's difficult. I mean, there are a lot of people out there who are decent human beings, don't get me wrong, but every once in a while we get a little hangry and need a Snickers bar, right? So it's really tough. I was born and raised with, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say it. Okay, I got you. But when that didn't work out, my mother told me to kill them with kindness, which is totally fine. I just named my pistol Kindness. So, but it's that whole, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. Okay, that could potentially add value. I mean, it's some of these different little things that we learn when we're kids.
Yeah. Yep.
And that could be one of those little situations. So it's a very simple challenge that is very broad. And I sincerely challenge all of you, and I hope that we keep each other on our toes in a non-guilty fashion. Just, hey, man, rent value, it's cool. Right on.
Awesome.
So,
well, Mike, you brushed over it a few times, and I kind of let you talking about Bunker Labs because I'm also going to have Joe on a future episode talking about Bunker Labs, and he's going to probably go into great detail about what it is and how it works. But for the people that are listening right now to this episode, and they're curious now about this Bunker Labs that you keep talking about, can you give just a kind of a brief description of what it is before we go?
Sure, yeah. You can find it at bunkerlabs.org. Bunker Labs is a nationwide veteran-focused business accelerator. We come together as a community of veterans, business leaders, civilians, and veteran alike. And the whole focus of it is essentially all of the ambitious veterans who are looking for one another to be able to collaborate and springboard off of. That's where we found each other, because it's a continuation, in a brick and mortar sense, a continuation of a lot of these different education platforms that you can go through. So Bunker Labs and IVMF are partnered at the Institute of Veterans and Military Families. I went through the Entrepreneurship Bootcamp for Veterans program. That was a perfect entry-level experience to get me into Bunker Labs, where then I had the ability to take my already through proof of concept business and then accelerate that business, because you put me in the room with all of the people that, I mean, frankly, all the people that matter. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm a little biased, but yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, that is Bunker Labs, a veteran-focused business accelerator, and we all help each other out. There's no, hey, I'm above that because I've already ran $1 billion company. That's fine. Those guys are members.
Wow.
You know, hey, I don't know if I can do that. I don't even have a company. No problem. Come on out to a Bunker Brain Trust. We're just going to, you know, there's programming at a Bunker Brain Trust, but also you have the ability to network and just be a fly on the wall if you want, you know, smoke and joke afterwards. It usually rolls into happy hour. So you'll see
nice.
you know, after my Brain Trust, I like bringing a cigar. My work's over at that point. I'm chilling, man. So,
and you got,
yeah.
and you have these all over the country, right? I believe there's one in DC, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's nationwide. There's 12 locations. It's headquartered out of Chicago, but there's 12 locations across the U.S. We're looking to ramp up in various cities. Civilians always ask why we're not close to the military bases. Veterans get it pretty much right off the bat. I don't know if you've ever spent any time outside of Fort Bragg or Camp Lejeune, but it sucks. So we go where all the money and all the business is, which is in Raleigh and Durham and
DC,
Charlotte, DC and New York and LA and Austin. Silicon Valley's opening up, Portland, I believe.
Oh, nice.
Seattle, Kansas City, Nashville has a great one. Blake Hogan. Blake Hogan was one of my lieutenants coming through TBS. I trained him how to shoot.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Imagine that. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, I know all of his tricks. Jacksonville, Florida. I believe Atlanta's standing one up.
Nice.
Yeah, Philadelphia, Baltimore, DC, as you said. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong. We're not everywhere yet. And we're looking for other highly motivated vetrepreneurs who are looking to start their own potentially or work within the organization. I am a paid employee of Bunker Labs, but I'm an entrepreneur and a public speaker. So I get paid as a public speaker as well. It all fits into the mission. That's the whole point.
Right.
Which Todd Connor, our CEO, great guy, naval surface warfare officer, good dude. He's like, yeah, that's how it's supposed to work. That's literally, that's it. So it's all veterans who are in entrepreneurship, helping fellow veterans become entrepreneurs and build entrepreneurial teams, which is, of course, crucial because it's bringing together the overall scope. It's bringing together the overall veteran community who might be, hey, I'm in a tech job, but I still want to do some fractional, code work for you and stuff like that. Absolutely. Come be a part of the Bunker Brain Trust. So
that sounds amazing. And Mike, I am definitely going to touch base with you offline and talk to you more about this. And I'm very thankful that I had you on and you were able to talk a little bit about everything you had going on with Cigars and Sea Stories and the TEDx talk and Bunker Labs and speaking that you're doing. It was really cool to have you on.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we haven't even gotten into the 2 wives and 4 kids yet, but we'll figure that out for another day.
Yeah, we'll bring you back on to talk about just that.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Mike. You have a great evening.
You as well. Take care. Be well.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. As always, I welcome you to check out the show notes at veteranresourcepodcast.com /073, and you're going to get all of the information on Michael Penney, and you'll be able to connect to all of the things that Michael was talking about during this awesome interview. That's all I have for you today. I hope you all have a great Thursday, and I will see you tomorrow for episode 74.